Please no shenanigans. Well, if you're in chat, welcome Yagi. Welcome, welcome. So, assuming I can get through all that I need to actually get through today, which this is a somewhat of a longer one than last time, this should only take about a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. Maybe 45 minutes, not sure. So, last week, as a short recap, since you're new to the series here, last week we talked about the basic skills for crafting, the ones that every crafter has. You know, things like basic and standard synthesis, the basic touches Master's Mend, so on and so forth. And what they did, how useful they were, which to look at when you're trying to build your rotation, as you're leveling, which ones were important, which ones you could probably just toss off your bar because they were, quite honestly, quite useless. We also talked a little bit about some of the basics of crafting stuff, about what was important to crafters, CP being the most important, which we'll be going over that quite a bit over this next 30-45 minutes. So today, we're going to be talking about the additional skills, the ones that are unique to each of the crafters that you can only achieve by leveling those particular crafts. And we'll also be talking about how to actually level, and what you should be going for and what you should be focusing on as you're leveling your crafters, and how to level effectively. So these additional skills are not they're not in any particular order of importance or from any particular class. Certain ones I've grouped together because they're just obvious to group together. Others a little less so. They have sort of a synergy to each other that we'll talk about as we get through them. So, since we have so many skills to get through in such a short period of time, let's go ahead. So the first one I'm going to talk about is rumination. Rumination, and I will go ahead and kind of go through them. Rumination, very simply, will take your inner quiet stacks and expend them. It'll use them, and it'll give you additional CP based on the amount of inner quiet stacks you have. Now, this is very useful early on. It's a very early skill, Carpenter level 15. It has no cost to it. It's just free CP. And it's very useful, you know, for getting that early CP when you don't really have that much to work with. You don't really have much in the way of skills really to make use of it, and the ones you do have are fairly expensive. So getting a little extra can help you out in the long run. And you don't have anything yet to really take advantage of those inner quiet stacks anyway. So if you've got them, you might as well use them for something. And since one of the things we talked about last week was that anytime you're doing quality, you want to have inner quiet up, because having the inner quiet stacks and the bonuses to control that they provide is more important than the actual numbers that you're hitting. Even if you're terrible and you successfully hit only the poor quality ones. Poor quality hits when they come up, and you get terrible numbers. That inner quiet stack number and amount can save you in the end. And one of the things that you'll end up using it on is Byrogot's Blessing. Byrogot's is right here on my bar. Byrogot's Blessing, it's a big boost to quality at the end. It takes those inner quiet stacks, and for each one, it starts off at 100% efficiency, which is great. And then for every stack, it's a 20% bonus to efficiency. It's a healthy hit, especially as you get higher and higher up. At 5, you're already talking about a double efficiency hit for your quality. That's pretty big. You get up to 10, well, now we're talking a 300% hit. That's pretty massive, and when you combine that with Great Strides, where it's doubled already, so now we're talking about starting at 100 and going up to 5 stacks is a 200% hit. This now becomes a 400% hit. You can't underscore how much that actually helps, and this is where those inner quiet stacks really take effect, is having those really allows you to turn a failing craft run into a successful one, or at least give it its best possible chance to do what it needs to do. There are other skills that are very similar to this. There's Beauregard's Brow, which is a little bit of a funny skill. It has a higher starting efficiency at 150%, but it only gives you 10% for each inner quiet stack. As a downside, it also has a worse success chance. I'd call that a little bit of a hit or miss kind of thing. And on top of that, you can only use it when you've procced a good or an excellent hit. So it's not typically used in any sort of, macroable rotation, because it's not something you ordinarily want to use. You want to assume that you're going and you're going to have the higher quality, the higher numbers of inner quiet stacks, and you're going to get the bonus and the greater efficiency hit that you would get from Beauregard's Blessing rather than Brow. So you typically wouldn't put it into a macroable rotation. However, it does have the benefit that if, and believe me, there are a lot of ifs here, if you proc a good or an excellent, and your run has been awful, and you've only got 5 or less stacks, Beauregard's Brow makes more sense. You'll get better efficiency out of it. But there's a lot of ifs there. There's too many ifs there to make it really worthwhile. I'll be honest, I've never hit it. I've never hit it. Even when I do manual rotations, I never hit it. There's no point to it. Huh?
There's a lot of buffering.
They're buffering? I'm not dropping frames. That's not me.
Okay, I'm just making sure because there's just buffering like beyond all reason here.
Yeah, that's not me. I'm sending all the frame. Twitch is getting all my frames. I can't help it if they're not doing things properly with them.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just me.
Well, thank you for keeping an eye on it.
Okay then.
All right.
As you were.
Thank you. Okay, so the next one we're talking about is, if I can find it, or am I on the right one? Yes, I am on the right one, so to make this easy on myself, swap over. The next two that we're going to talk about are the two Ingenuities, Ingenuity 1 and Ingenuity 2. Basically, what they do is they lower the effective level of a craft. So say a 50 craft, it treats it as if it's a 48 or a 46 craft, for example. I don't know exactly how much, level-wise it lowers it, but it does make it easier. And what this allows you to do is you get more progress done on your hits, and you get more quality on your hits as well while it's active. From a practical standpoint, Ingenuity 1 says it's slightly lower. I'm thinking maybe 1 level, I think, is all that it really lowers, which in the grand scheme of things is not a lot. And for a 24 CP cost for not much of a benefit, I wouldn't use it, to be honest. I mean, if you've got, 25, 26 CP left over and you would slot it in, sure, slot it in. It can't hurt. But it's not something I would necessarily strive for. Ingenuity 2, on the other hand, is a pretty big boost. It can make or break some of your crafts as you're leveling. Wherein if you didn't have it on, you wouldn't be able to produce enough progress to actually complete the craft during a progress step. So it's not bad to have, for sure. It's definitely something to keep in mind while you're doing your leveling. Though it is a 50 craft, a 50 skill to get, it is worth it, in my opinion, to have it available if you need it. I typically tend to use them at the finisher. Ingenuity to bring down the craft for when I do Beauregard's Blessing or Beauregard's Brow, if I ever actually use it. Maybe I will come Stormblood. Who knows? But that's when I use it, because that's when it's going to have the most effect, is during that finisher. Both for progress and for the additional quality hit that it'll bring to the table. Shenanigans. Silly audience shenanigans. Okay, so the next one is innovation. Like ingenuity, innovation is specifically for control. It gives you a 50% boost to your control, which will affect the next quality hit, and in this case for the next 3 steps, that'll take effect. Now, you can use this in a number of different ways. You can use it during your quality phase when you're building up all of those inner quiet stacks. This will give you, bigger numbers, and it'll help you get closer to that 100% while you're just in the quality phase rather than waiting until the finisher. But it also works well in the finisher because once you've got all those inner quiet stacks, and I did actually pay attention this past week and looked at what 11 stacks on level 60 looks like, and we're talking 3,000 control. It's gross. But if you innovate on top of that, well, now you're talking 4,500, and that's a massive boost to your control that you're then going to turn around and do great strides and then right into a Byrogot's Blessing. All of a sudden, you've basically just done more control. You've done more quality than the craft itself has capable of doing. So even if you were really awful in your hits and you were, really unlucky and you were kind of low, it can really make or break your HQ chance, which is really what you're really attempting to do anyway. So having innovated on there is not bad. And it's not expensive. It's 18 CP, which is the same as a basic touch. For the cost of one quality hit, you could dramatically impact how much your finisher can actually pull off. And quite honestly, that may be worth it in the end, even if you have to sacrifice one quality hit. For one inner quiet stack for it, that 50% boost is well worth it for the cost. So next is Piece by Piece. This one comes from the Armorers. This one, it says just what it says. Increases the remaining progress. Now, that does mean that it does have diminishing returns. The first one you hit is definitely a third of the progress. The second one you hit, though, is less than half the progress. It's not like you'll get to 66%. You'll get somewhere in the high 50s, I believe, is the way that will work out. So it does have diminishing returns, even in my end level 60 rotation for doing 2-star, 3-star, 4-star crafts. I only use it twice. And then I use other skills to progress differently than that. After that, you're kind of starting to waste durability. After the second one, you'll start gaining less than if you had just hit other skills to do progress. So it's not worth the investment on the CP cost, because it is a 15 CP hit to actually do it. Go away, map. So just keep that in mind. It does have diminishing returns and a success rate on top of that, so you would want to have at least a steady hand up to mitigate that. Next up is manipulation. So manipulation is... it's a slightly cheaper Master's Mend 1. You save a couple of CP off of it, but you do have to plan for it, because it does take essentially 3 steps to get the same durability gain. But since you'll be using it, they sort of just go away. They sort of cancel each other out. So think of it like getting just 30 points of free durability as you're crafting. 3 free hits in and of themselves. So just keep that in mind. But like I said, it is slightly cheaper. So once again, CP is rare, and if you could save 4, that could be channeled somewhere else as you're doing things like using Rumination to gain back CP. Or the next skill we're talking about is Comfort Zone. Comfort Zone is another way to get free CP out of things. So it is a 66 CP cost, but what it does is for the next 10 steps, every step after you complete an action, and it is after you complete an action, you'll gain back 8 CP. which is good. Overall, after 10 steps, you'll have 80 CP returned to you. So for you pay in 66, you get back 80. So you gain 14 CP off of that. Another thing, you do have to plan for this, because you do have to go 9 of the 10 steps to be able to actually say, hey, I actually gained something from this. Otherwise, well, you kind of wasted CP, and that's no fun. That's no fun at all. So yeah, plan your rotations. You do have to have a 10 action section for where Comfort Zone can actually be useful, but it is a staple in Yagi, you are correct. It is very useful in low durability crafts. I basically used it mostly for the 4 CP cost. You are correct on that. There are very few of those for now. I still use it even in those rotations, because instead of using Master's Med, one for the CP cost, as I keep bringing up, but also simply because it'll end up giving me extra durability for progress, which, depending on what I'm doing, is far more valuable, especially at least the rotations that I do for most things other than what is it? It's 1 star, 70 durability items and up. I use a different rotation, but the one I use for everything that or lower includes manipulation for just that reason. Makes things very, very easy. Okay, so the next group that we're talking about here, there's 3 of them. Rapid Synthesis, as well as Flawless Synthesis and Maker's Mark. So Flawless Synthesis and Rapid Synthesis back in the 2.0 era made almost no sense, honestly. There was no good reason. I mean, look at Flawless Synthesis, for example. Progress by 40. 40! Even back then, when durability was much, much lower, I don't know if I'd call that a good thing. There was just so much durability or so much progress that you'd have to go through, and you'd end up using a lot of durability in the process. Now, to be fair, I wasn't as high level crafter back then as I am now, so maybe there were ways to get around it. I don't know. I looked at it and went, you know, that may not be as useful. And it very well may not have been, until Maker's Mark came out for 3.0. And you know, it's a level 54 skill, but it makes it free and costs no durability. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, duh, now this can make sense. This makes sense to use, and the rotation that I use for my starred crafting does this. Maker's Mark, based on the durability, on the difficulty of the recipe, gives you a different number of stacks to use Flawless Synthesis on. I want to say at 3 star, I believe it gives you 17 hits that you can do. 17 steps. And that's enough to get it all the way up. Which is not bad. It's not bad at all. So I'll take it, and it made it worthwhile. Now, Rapid Synthesis is... Wait, was this the one? Was it Rapid that I was looking at? There was another one that was funky. Rapid Synthesis is a similar one, though, that is a little bit interesting. Rapid Synthesis, actually, I think I grouped this weird. Yeah, I totally grouped this weird. This is what I get for doing my notes at 1 o'clock in the morning. Rapid Synthesis is matched up with the other one. This one is specifically for progress hits, but it is the counterpart to the next one we were going to talk about, which is Hasty Touch. Hasty Touch is extremely important. Rapid Synthesis, I wouldn't use it on any of the higher level rotations, considering the higher level rotations, basically, it's your last hit is your last progress hit, and you can't get that success rate to 100%. I would never want the last hit to have anything short of 100%. 100% of a chance, even if its efficiency is huge. And I guess maybe if you've absolutely screwed the pooch and you've messed up your rotation, you've forgotten to hit enough flawless syntheses, or you didn't hit the right number of careful synthesis, which we'll talk about in a second, I guess I'd take the shot, but I would never put that into another one. Yeah, you can. I mean, it's extremely useful in I could see it being extremely useful in the 4-star crafting. The one that I found basically does not make use of rapid synthesis. It makes use of careful synthesis 2, Maker's Mark piece by piece. It makes use of flawless synthesis, and that's it for progress. And the rotation I have can do 1-star to 4-star, no problem at all. Yeah, I'm using Wraths. I'm using Wraths rotation for sure. It's too well put together for me not to use it. If I had spent time on it, I might have come up with something similar, but not worth the effort when somebody else has already done the work for me. I can make use of it and at least figure out what and why they're doing it. So, I'll consider it there. All right. So moving on from, let's talk a little bit more specifically about Hasty Touch. So once you get Hasty Touch, Culinarian level 15. Honestly, once you get Hasty Touch, I never touched the regular touches. I never touched them again. It just, no. Why waste CP there? Why? There's no need for that. I mean, honestly, if level 60 3-star crafting, 4-star crafting, and I'm sitting at 392 freaking CP, really? I've only gained like 150 CP since I started at level 1. No. I got a free option for control? Yeah, I'm only going to get an 80% success chance on it at best, but you know what? That's better than spending CP. In my book, that's way better than spending CP. And, all my quality hits go there. The only time that changes is on a situation we'll talk about coming up in a few skills with Tricks of the Trade. But we'll get to those. We'll get to that in a little bit. So the next 2 skills, if I can ever remember where any of these skills actually are, I think I'm... Yep, of course. The next 2 is Waste Not and Waste Not 2. For quality steps and quality phases, this is invaluable, especially on low durability items that you're trying to craft, because you can take that low durability and make it way better. Simply put, for every hit normally, it takes off 10 durability. This reduces that to 5 durability loss for every hit, which you can get into some interesting situations where you end up with 5 at the end, and that's as good as a 10 hit when you hit it. So you don't have to worry about that per se. But for Waste Not, you can basically take what would normally be 40 durability and cram it into 20, which is fantastic. Waste Not 2 is the same, but it lasts for 8 steps, so you can take 80 durability and cram it down into 40. That's valuable. You can basically double, or almost double, the number of Hasty Touch hits and Hasty Touch chances that you get in a single phase. And that's valuable. Because if you notice on Inner Quiet, it says up to 11, bonus stacks up to 11 times. You can have 11 stacks of Inner Quiet at maximum. I hate the fact that it's not an even number. Bothers the hell out of me. Why not 10? Seriously, why not 10? But how do you get to 11 stacks of anything when every hit takes 10 and Master's Mend or Manipulation costs tons of CP? How do you do that? How do you get that high? Well, Waste Not and Waste Not 2. That's exactly how you do it. Just getting as many possible chances in is best you can do. Best you can do. They are pricey. 56 and 98 CP. 98. 98 hurts. 98 hurts. A lot. A lot. But to be honest, if you're going to basically be able to get 8 hits out of something, yeah, it's justifiable to stick in there. Obviously, only use the ones that make sense for the craft that you're trying to use. Waste Nots if you're really low durability, and believe me, I'm really hoping that when Stormblood hits, they don't continue their trend and all of a sudden our low durability stuff is 30 and our high durability stuff is 60 because they can't figure out a way to make it any harder except by lowering the number of times we can actually hit it. Ugh, I'm not looking forward to that. I can almost bet they're going to do it too. So yeah, if you need it, if you can use it, if you have the CP to spare while still doing all your quality stuff and what have you, and considering you're saving a lot on your quality by going with hasty touches instead of the basic touches and all of that, yeah, spend it on a Waste Not. That way you can get some extra touches out of it, better chances for CP, and a much nicer time. Also useful if you're trying to do progress on like a piece of furniture that you don't need to worry about HQing. And its difficulty is disgusting. Yeah, hitting Waste Not 2 to do your progress stuff also works really, really well. Really well. Okay, next up is Careful Synthesis 1 and 2. So, Careful Synthesis, both of them are guaranteed hits. They're 100% success. You don't have to worry about having steady hand up for them. Their only difference, and they both are free, their only difference is the amount of efficiency they use. 90 versus 120. As you're leveling, yeah, Careful Synthesis 1 makes a lot of sense. If you can complete with it, perfectly fine, because even basic synthesis, you have to have steady hand up, and that's a CP cost. I'd rather take a little bit less efficiency, and 10% isn't too bad, to get guaranteed hits as you're leveling. Because as I said on the first time, I am going to be speaking to this if you haven't reached really that level 50 or level 60 of all of your crafters. So as you're leveling up, getting Careful Synthesis, and like I said, taking a small hit on your progress hits, but not having to pay anything for it, not having to have any worry about success chance is very valuable. Once you get to 50 in Weaver, however, and you get Careful Synthesis 2, all bets are off. Use it exclusively. Unless you're doing anything else, like Yagi is with Rapid Synthesis, Careful Synthesis is the way to go. It's free, always going to hit, and is 120% efficiency. You can't go wrong with that. You can do some wondrous things with that if the rest of your rotation takes that into account. So just keep that in mind. So the next one, my mouth is drying out. This is fantastic. The next one is Tricks of the Trade. So Tricks of the Trade is an interesting one. It requires you to proc good or excellent. And assuming that assuming you're in a good place in your rotation when this occurs, where you're not wasting stacks of things like steady hand that you need to have or what have you, you can use it and it will give you back 20 CP. Now, this is good, but obviously unreliable. Now, why would you want to look at this? Well, in the rotation that I use, basically every time, for every Tricks of the Trade I can successfully get off, I can change at the end a set of 5, or technically 6 if I'm supremely lucky, hasty touches, and I can convert them with that 20 CP. For each one I hit from Tricks of the Trade, I can convert it into a basic touch. Now, I'm getting the same efficiency out of it, but I'm eliminating that failure chance, that 20% failure chance that you get from Hasty Touch. I'm eliminating it and guaranteeing a quality hit for no cost on me, essentially. Because RNGesus decided to bless me with 20 CP, I'm making use of 18 of it to give myself more quality. So, just keep that in mind as you're doing manual rotations and things like that. It's not a bad one if you've got space for it. Just figure out where the best places in your rotation as you craft it is appropriate to use it. You can screw yourself by hitting it in the wrong place, so just keep that in mind. You may drop off a stack of steady hand early and something will fail that didn't need to fail. So just be careful with it, but it is valuable once you figure out where you can actually use it. Let's see. And speaking of steady hand has a, it has a 2. But it is an additional skill rather than one that everyone gets. And this you get from Culinarian level 37. Similar to Steady Hand, except instead of 20% success chance increase, success rate, you get 30%. It's the same duration, but you get 10% more success. And it only costs 3 CP more. 3, yeah. 3 CP more, which is not bad. You still want to be aware of which one you're using. If you're having to only compensate 10 or 20% of a success chance over its entire duration, every skill that it's going to hit is either a 90 or an 80, don't use Steady Hand 2. You're wasting 3 CP. Use Steady Hand 1 instead. If you're trying to do stuff that's 70 or lower, a bunch of hasty touches, if you're happening to hit a basic touch, you're going to want to have Steady Hand 2 up to bring it up to 100%, or 80% in hasty touch's case. So just keep that in mind of which one you use best fits the skills that you're trying to use it for. So, Reclaim is the next one. Reclaim, basically an oops, I fucked up button. Basically, whenever you fail a craft, you have a fairly low chance of getting back all of the materials that you put into it, so that you don't lose anything. Reclaim doesn't make it guaranteed, but it makes it 90%. Honestly, though, if I'm being honest, for 55 CP, they could have made it 100%. I mean, really, that's just mean to make it 90%. You spend it, you do what you can, and you still lose all the stuff. Like, they could have made that 100%. But whatever. That's just me bickering. The one thing to keep in mind is, depending on your rotation that you use, some classes may not be able to have it. Because they are ones that don't bring a lot to the table on their rotation on their own. Take, for example, Blacksmith, where I'm sitting right now. They're bringing Ingenuity and Ingenuity too, but the main rotation I use for my Starred Crafting doesn't use Ingenuity or Ingenuity 2. So the skills that I have to have way more, and I literally don't have enough room to put Reclaim on my bar. So keep that in mind. Some classes may not be able to use it depending on what rotation and what skills are required in there. It is kind of a puzzle piece that you have to stick in there when you can. Because obviously you don't want to drop off something critical for the rotation just for an oops button. That you'll use very rarely at that. So, let's see. The other one in Culinarian. The last one in Culinarian is Muscle Memory. And maybe, Yagi, maybe you'll be able to shed some light on this. If I'm being perfectly honest, I don't see where this actually would make much sense to do. It's similar to Piece by Piece, except Piece by Piece has a 90% success rate versus this is 100. And it is cheaper. It is 6 CP versus 15. So in that regard, it is better, but it is only available on the first step. Now, the other one that's only available on the first step is Maker's Mark. And from what I've seen, Maker's Mark is far more of a valuable skill to have on, unless you're really trying to brute force your progress in the beginning. And if you are, then you're having to spend a lot more on recovering the durability that you've lost from this brute force attempt. Yeah. Compact macros, yes. It is nice for it, but it's the same thing, right? So you're spending durability where you didn't have to, and you're spending it at the cost of CP to regenerate the durability to do quality. As you said, it's strictly inferior. And to be perfectly honest, there's no if there. Like, it's just straight there. I mean, even Wrath's rotation. I've got macros for Wrath's rotation. It's entirely macroable if I don't care about tricks of the trade. If I don't care about tricks of the trade and I'm doing bulk crafting, whatever. And it still does very, very well on its quality. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those skills. God, what is it? It's a feint for dragoons. It's that skill that you look at and go, why? Why is this here? I'm sure we'll get at least one in Stormblood that's like that, where we're just like, why? Why did you think this was a good idea to put here? True. For macro crafting, I suppose. I mean, if you're really not worried about the overall percentage of HQs that you'll get out of it, I can see it being useful. But my personal preference is to have a much longer macro, if it means that I can get more things that could sell well or assist me in crafting future steps better. But I've always been one to HQ craft everything. I mean, yeah, I mean, depends on the rotation. Maybe I'll do some research on it, see if there's anything exactly what it's going for. But I HQ craft everything, especially when I'm leveling. Especially when I was leveling. When I was doing Culinarian with the Moogles, because screw actually doing Culinarian. I HQ crafted even the Moogle quests. It didn't require HQ, but hey, give me that XP. Give me that XP. So, it is what it is. So, the last group that we're talking about is the brands and the names of insert element here. So, there's an interesting skill to have, or to see. It's a progress hit. But if you're crafting something, in this case I'm looking at Brand of Lightning, if you're crafting something that primarily uses lightning crystals of some sort, it's considered a lightning recipe. It's lightning affinity. It's sometimes dubious whenever it uses two different ones as to whether or not it considers one or the other. Usually it's whichever one is more or listed first, I'll say. You get double. So it's a 6 CP, 200 efficiency progress hit if you have it right. Now, it does have a success chance of less than 100%, so we'll call it okay there. At least it's only 90. The problem with them, the problem with all the brands, is that they're additional skills. You have to take up a skill slot to get it in there. So either your rotation doesn't have a whole lot of other additional skills that it's making use of, and you have one or two, in the case of name, to slot in as you're changing one for the other. Obviously, it's a manual craft skill. It's not a macro craft skill, unless you really want to have 6 different macros that are basically the same except for that one skill use. Um, so I'll call it dubious use. I've played with them a little bit, which is why I know how they're kind of funky on multi-crystal types, but the name skills are specifically buffs for brand. So next 5 steps, the efficiency is increased, and it's increased determined by current progress. Now, the way I read that, I haven't played with the names, I will be honest here. The way I read that is it's better the less progress you have, is I'm guessing how that actually works. Now, having it increase more, the more progress you have doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but having it more when you're less makes a lot more sense. It's that same diminishing return that they kind of like sometimes. But again, you have to take up an additional skill slot for this. And as you can see, my skill slots are full just with the rotation skills that I have. There's no space for that in there. I could probably adjust things around and make it worthwhile. But, if you've got a rotation that works, why break it and fix it? And then try and put stuff back together. So I mean, people are welcome to play with it. It's an interesting skill to play around with and try and make a rotation for it. Call it crafting challenge mode. I personally would never bank on it, especially considering I'd have to change it out every time I wanted to use it. And I don't do a lot of manual crafting, if I'm honest. I try and macro everything for crafting. Less buttons, the better. Okay. That gets us past part 1, and we're okay on time. We'll probably go for another 15-20 minutes, and then we should be done. The next section I want to talk about is leveling effectiveness, and how to effectively level your crafters. Levs. All the levs. Levs for fucking days. Do them all. All 100 of your allowances, funnel them into crafting. Now, how you do them is up to you. Some people who are a little bit lazy, and I will call fake crafters from now on, they buy their turn-ins. Or they have someone else craft them. These are the ones that are just trying to get to 60. These are the... Alright, Yagi, thank you for coming by. Much appreciated. As I told you when you came by, we're doing this every Tuesday, and we will be progressing through everything about crafting. Next week will be 50-star crafting specifically, and 51 to 59 leveling, how to approach it. So, and what to focus on as you're going through. So I hope to see you next week, and if you know any other crafters, especially those who are leveling, please feel free to spread the word and let them know that this is occurring. This will be every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Time, at least up through Stormblood, maybe a little bit after. We might take some time off as I'll be leveling like crazy myself. So thank you for coming by, and I hope to see you next week. Alright, so like I said, levs... Fake crafters, buy their shit, have someone else make them for them. These are the people who haven't... These are the people who... Oh, these are the same kind of people who pay for clears. Who just want the title. I mean, how awesome is this title? Grandmaster of the Hand. That's an amazing freaking title. Who wouldn't want that? To be honest. So yeah, they're going to spend their levs, and they're going to do their thing, and they'll level and they'll get it, but they're not crafters. They're fake crafters. If you ask them to, if they hit 60 and you ask them to craft a 3-star, 4-star item, even if they have all Ironworks gear, they wouldn't know how to start. Would not know how to start. Make your craft materials. For 2 reasons. 1, you'll actually understand what you're doing better. You'll actually know what you're doing and be able to progress properly. And two, just the sheer act of making them, especially as you're trying to make them in HQ for the additional XP you get from turning in the levs in HQ, will give you lots of experience, and you'll have to make less lev turn-in items by making the items that you're turning in. It's a very nice system, to be honest. The fact that, especially because the XP boost you get while trying to make HQ items is fairly disgusting. So, yeah, no, I'll totally take that extra XP and not have to make the, oh god, the damn trip going from, oh, which one was that? Going to Kurthus. Was that Gridania, I think, that had the Kurthan levs? I think so. Or no, I think they all did. But going from the city-states to Kurthus. Oh god, kill me now. I eventually figured out exactly where I needed to point my camera and then hit auto run, that I could run straight from the Aetheryte down to whatever that city is down there where the lives actually are. Why can't they be in the same city? But it got to the point where literally I could just point my camera and auto run. It was so boring. And Kurthus is boring to begin with. So yeah, the less you have to turn in at the end, the better. But yeah, those who do that sort of thing where they're using money to level their crafters that way, they're not crafters. They're the crafter equivalent of an ice mage. Please, don't be ice mages. Don't be ice mages. Nobody likes ice mages. So, what do you do when your levels are done? We've got 8 classes to level. 8 classes to level. I mean, let's look at this. Look at this nonsense. We have more classes than there were battle classes in Disciples of War in the fucking 2.0. Like, all of the battle classes from 2.0 only had, what is that? They only had a 1 job advantage over us crafters. We have a lot of crafters to get up, and we need all of them for those skills. All of them. So you're going to run out of levs real quick. And what do you do after that? Well, what I like to do is do bulk material crafting, where in a particular tier, for example, say you're, level 40 something or other, and you're running out. Cobalt. Cobalt is not hard to come by. You can get cobalt and iron ore real easily, and you can just hammer it out and attempt to HQ everything, because you'll get all of that XP that comes from that. And you're going to need cobalt, probably, for blacksmith, for the blacksmith levs, for some of the crafting levs for blacksmiths. So if you're going to need it anyway, you might as well make a ton of it and get a bunch of XP in the meantime while you're waiting for your levs to fill back up. So, not a bad way to do. So in all honesty, when you're leveling, the best way to do it in the end is to level all 8 at the same time. Level them equally. Because you're going to need all of these different additional skills in the end anyway, and not having some of them, especially as you're leveling, makes the rest way harder. Not to mention, you're going to need gear and everything else, and you're going to need food, and you're going to need this and that and whatever for other crafts that you need to make for lev turn-ins, especially as you get closer to 60. Your best bet is just level them all at the same time. And especially as you hit the particular choke points, 50, 60, and soon to be 70, you'll be in the best place to move past them for that same reason, because you'll have all the skills available. You'll have the ability to make the gear that you need for the next step. You'll have the food that you need, or at least the ability to get the food that you need. You'll be in the best place for that sort of progression. The difficulty jumps in those locations. 50 and 51 is different than 50 and 53 star, or 4 star. Those are way different difficulties. So having all of your classes there and having all the skills and having all of the tools available to you make those skill jumps much easier to deal with in the end. So just keep that in mind. However, if you choose to be an ice mage, kidding. If you choose not to level everything at the same time, you want to focus on the ones that'll help you gear and the ones that'll help you get the most important skills, or at least for you, the most important skills, the best skills. For example, blacksmith and weaver for your gear. Blacksmith for most of the tools. Carpenter needs a few, but blacksmith does most of them. And weaver because most of the gear is cloth-based in some way. For skills, carpenter, go for Buyer Gods. You need Buyer Gods. So need Buyer Gods. Culinarian, get Hasty Touch and Steady Hand too. Absolutely necessary. Alchemist for culinary, for Comfort Zone. But really, don't do that. Level all of them at the same time. You'll love yourself a lot more and hate yourself a lot less. So let's talk about gear. HQ in particular. HQ gear. It's your friend and your enemy. It's good for the obvious extra stats. And will help you get a leg up on the things that you're trying to make. But it does guarantee that the next tier of gear has to be HQ. You're stuck. HQ to HQ to HQ to HQ. You can't drop an HQ to an NQ. You can't go next tier down because you just couldn't make it in HQ. You have to have it in HQ. So it does kind of mess you up, and it does make things a little bit awkward as well at the end. Especially as you may screw up your craft. RNG might screw you over, and you end up with an NQ piece instead of the HQ that you needed. Oh, it's time to take the failure over to the market board and try and recoup some of the money that you may have spent getting materials. If you haven't been able to get some of them yet in the proper qualities that you wanted. So it does cause a bit of a headache. I did have a few pieces going when I went to 2-star. I had a few pieces go on the market board just because RNG really messed me over. You know, an NQ on an 83% HQ chance. Like, come on, really? I successfully hit like 6 hasty touches that are 80% out of the like 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever that I hit. Come on, please. But it is what it is. But you get stuck in this rut. If you're starting with NQ gear, well, you can keep going with NQ gear. That's still a bonus. And if you happen to HQ something, hey, fantastic. So you kind of work your way into it a little bit more than just having HQs at the start. Then you're just stuck for life. My gear, for example, will probably last me, I think, at least until 64, 65 before I could actually get something better. Hopefully. I'm really hoping. Really hoping. So anyway, that will do it for this week. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for those who came by today. This was fun as usual. We'll be back next week, next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central, for more crafting seminar. We will be going over 50-star crafting, tentatively. We'll be going over 50-star crafting and 51 to 59 leveling. That may change. I don't know. I decided what the topics were going to be about 2 minutes before I started. So that'll probably change. But either way, we'll be back next Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Central Time, here in the Moogle University basement. And we will go over more. As a reminder to all of you who may be watching this later on, we do have a crafting link shell and Discord, specifically for crafting contacts outside of Moogle University. If you wish to join, send a tell to either myself, Ether Imperial, or my partner in crime, Dynamite Loyola, sitting over there AFK in the chair. There she is. Send a tell to either one of us if we're online. Please get out of my body. And we'll be happy to add you. We do free company sponsored crafting runs, and when we open them up to that link shell, you'll have access to help us make money and help yourself make some money as well. It's there essentially for if you ever need assistance with crafting, have questions, need to make a request specifically of the FC for gear and whatnot, whatever the case may be, or if your FC just needs a fourth person for company crafting, send a message over the link shell. One of us will stop on by. So, thank you all for watching. This has been a fantastic session. I hope to see you all next time. Take care. Bye-bye.